It would not be easy to invade Taiwan, and to try and to fail would probably be the end of Xi Jinping and possibly the Chinese Communist Party.
Just looking at it for a moment from the US perspective, do you expect Donald Trump to further ramp up tensions and the trade war with China? I mean, Joe Biden kind of followed on from what the Trump administration started when he took office. Do you expect Donald Trump to pick up the ball and take it even further?
Well, certainly he's made some pretty hawkish appointments. Secretary of State, National Security Advisor. These are people who have been very outspoken about the need to confront China. They think that China's taken a free ride on the global economy and on the United States, has stolen technology, has ignored the rules for so long that China needs to be confronted on this. But then I guess if Trump has one diplomatic strength, it's unpredictability. And you've got, on the one hand, the China hawks who he's appointed and brought in there. On the other hand, you've got Elon Musk, whose businesses are heavily dependent upon China and Chinese favor. What's going to be intriguing, we've seen this shot across the bows of NVIDIA, but of course, two of the most high-profile investors in China are Apple and Tesla, two blue-chip American companies, two of the best-known American companies on the planet. And they are heavily invested in China as a production base, as a market. Now, you could argue that they would perhaps be juicy targets for China if it was looking for a high-profile means of retaliation. But then it's more complicated than that, because Elon Musk, Tim Cook, have both been big cheerleaders for engagement with China. So if you're Xi Jinping sitting in the Zhongnanhai leadership compound, you'd probably see Apple and Tesla as important assets that could actually help push your case in Washington. So you might not wish to sanction them or to be seen to be moving against them because they're arguing your corner. So why would you do that? And
just to return to the issue of Taiwan, I mean, I feel like I ask this question every time I see you, but given the military exercises we've seen this week, does that make an invasion more likely in the next 12 months?
I think what we should look out for is not so much I think an invasion would be well signposted. The sheer logistics of mounting an invasion in terms of the number of people, the number of assets, the limitations, geography, climate, it's all on the side of the defenders in Taiwan. It would not be easy to invade Taiwan, and to try and to fail would probably be the end of Xi Jinping and possibly the Chinese Communist Party. Far more likely, I think, is the anaconda strategy as it's been described, the squeezing of the island, perhaps elements of an embargo, stopping ships, stopping planes, questioning ships, an intensification of the cyber war, the information war, the mysterious cutting of internet cables to outlying islands. These are all grey zone strategies which China is already engaged in and which it can intensify. And the problem for any American administration who would seek to, where's your red line? Where do you say that's enough? Because China is a master at pushing that line, and I would see it more likely to have an intensification of these grey warfare elements over the coming months as a way of testing the administration and testing their commitment to the defense of Taiwan.
On a slightly different note, but related to China, we're recording this 2 weeks from Christmas. There are a lot of the classic Christmas cyber scams doing the rounds, as always. How responsible is China for those?
Well, that's a very good question, because the global centre, the epicenter for cyber scamming is now the Far East. There are a lot of special economic zones, as they call, which dot the Mekong River. I visited a couple of them when I was researching Vampire State. They're run predominantly by Chinese gangsters. The biggest and most notorious is in Laos, a place called the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone, run by a gangster called Zhao Wei. UK, who's been sanctioned by America, by Britain, by numerous others for everything from gun running to drugs, to wildlife trade, illegal wildlife trade. And these special zones, their biggest money spinner now are cyber scams, everything from the sale of dubious investments to the infamous romance scam, when you're befriended by someone who appears to, it's a stolen profile, and you end up transferring cash or other assets. Now, China has always been very close to the triads, as Chinese organized crime is called. The party has never been shy about using them. And the problem is that these special economic zones claim to be under the umbrella of the Belt and Road Initiative. They claim loyalty to China. The gangsters are treated by the host governments, which tend to be very weak in Cambodia, in Laos, in Myanmar, as representatives of the Chinese government. And Zhao Wei in Laos has won numerous awards, just won the other day, for so-called economic contribution to the host country. Law enforcement internationally and in the region is pulling its hair out, because until very recently it was very difficult to get China to take these places seriously. Recently there have been raids on some of the more notorious special zones, but cynics would say this is because they have been targeting China instead of internationally, which has sort of been regarded almost as fair game. So at this time of year, when cyber scams tend to be at their height, we're seeing these areas thriving, and we're not seeing China sort of take the kind of action against them, which certainly in law enforcement in the region believes they should and could do.
Couple of things to finish off. First of all, what did you make of what happened in South Korea last week and the attempt by the president to impose martial law?
It was extraordinary, because I think, and many others, had assumed that South Korea, the stability of South Korean democracy, South Korean democratic institutions were deeply entrenched. And I think it was all the more shocking to see initially what is being now described as an attempted coup. I guess it's reassuring that South Korea reasserted itself, that democracy appears to have reasserted itself, and the president is being held to account. But certainly I was surprised. I think it did create a lot of shock among South Korea's allies, and also among those who had been, impressed by the president's ability to reach out to old enemy Japan, to be more robust on China, for instance. Geopolitically, he was playing all the right cards with the US administration, with the West, but has been deeply unpopular. Perhaps we took our eye off the ball, deeply unpopular domestically.
And just finally, looking into 2025, what are you expecting in terms of foreign policy from the second Trump administration? A lot of people talk about his isolationism, but do you expect him to withdraw America from world engagements, or do you think maybe that's overstated?
I think it's overstated. I think rhetorically you'll see a lot of America first, and rhetorically you'll see a lot of pressure, say, on Europe to play a bigger role, whether it's in Ukraine or in terms of their own defense. But I think one of the issues that Trump will face is everything tends to be connected, because if you put pressure on Ukraine to enter into a peace deal which benefits Putin, then you're also sending a signal to China about lack of resolve in supporting an ally. And that could be a very dangerous thing to do, as China starts to calculate about what it should do, how fast it should increase pressure around Taiwan, even plan for an invasion of Taiwan. So I think everything is linked up. As I say, the only thing that's predictable about Trump is his unpredictability. It's hard to know how the second presidency will pan out. To me, it was intriguing recently talking to people in Kiev and asking them about what they thought of a coming Trump administration. And I'd expected them to throw their hands in the air in horror. But one of the replies I had was, no, well, actually, dealing with Biden was deeply frustrating. The promises was slow to come. The delivery was slow. It was very difficult to the conditionality on the weapons, the type of weapons he was willing to supply. But at least with Trump, we might get some clarity. It might not be the clarity we want. And if he should try and do a deal with Putin, he'll quickly learn that that's not possible and could well be humiliated by that, which, of course, Trump does not like at all. So, I think I don't take the view that we're on an inevitable slope towards American isolationism and the undermining of Western institutions and alliances. I think the rhetoric will certainly be there, but I would be cautious to predict the direction it goes in reality once the Trump administration is bedded in.
Ian, it's always fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
A pleasure.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Frontline. For early access to our videos, member-only Q&As and live streams, then sign up for a membership via the link in the description. And for the latest news and breaking stories, listen to Times Radio and follow us at thetimes.com.